Who is the worst teacher you've ever had? A college business statistics professor who only talked about how rich he was from learning statistics and how he had a Porsche with a radar detector in the front and back. I failed that one. The next professor was much better and I actually learned from her. And passed. Glad you got a better professor. We had a professor who was similar. He would always talk about how successful he was. Once, he claimed that instead of sending a CV for a job application, he just sent a picture and got the job because he thought out of the box. I had a similar professor too. He would always talk about how many Fortune 500 companies he had worked at in the past 10 years. All I could think was, man, this guy can't keep a job. In 6th grade, one was sick and missed a day of school. So I didn't know what the homework was. The next day in class, the first thing I did was ask one of my classmates for the previous night's homework so I could do it that night. My teacher gave me a 0 and a detention in front of everyone for not turning in the assignment. I went to her privately after class and explained that I didn't have any friends in the class and had gotten everything I needed to do it that night as soon as I walked in before class started. She told me it's not her problem if I'm a loser and that I should have found a way instead of making excuses. I was a great student with straight A's. Never missed school. And was always well-mannered. I was absolutely mortified and so deeply hurt because in reality, not only did I not have any friends in that class, I didn't have many friends at all. The friends I did have, which were more school friends than actual friends, were on another team, so had a different set of teachers. Later in the quarter, I turned in a poem that I was incredibly proud of. I got nice paper to print it on and everything. And the poem itself was very real and very raw. She failed me on the project. And when I approached her about why she failed me, she told me the whole thing was stupid, the visual presentation and the poem itself. My mom still has that project framed in her house. And reminds me from time to time how meaningful it was for an 11-year-old to have written it. I'm not sure what that teacher had against me and still haven't been able to make sense of it all these years later. But I've never forgotten how she treated me. How do you give a failing grade for poetry? If you objectively didn't like it, fine. But it's a form of expression, lol. Especially if you actually did the assignment and didn't just write PP and turn it in. Haha, right? Especially at that age. Anything that just shows effort should pretty much get at least a passing grade. Right? I remember I had to write a poem for class once and I straight up wasn't feeling it that day. The prompt was write about the season of autumn, so I just wrote leaves 27 times followed by wow. I got an A. My teacher said it was creative and made its own statement. That really made me rethink a lot of things and I really appreciated her for it. My kindergarten teacher 35 years ago. Here is a few things I remember. Called me out in front of class for coloring a banana poorly. I'm severely nearsighted. This happened approximately 6 months before my first pair of glasses. We had a nap rest time. The other class got to lay down on floor mats. We had to rest our head while sitting at our desk. No problem. However, she would yell at anyone whose eyes were open. If you didn't have your eyes closed, you better not face her desk. SWATs were a thing back then for pretty mild behavior and/or not getting homework done. Forced everyone to take a tree's worth of worksheets on the last day of school to practice over the summer. They were just extra copies of what we already did and everyone talked about how we were just going to throw it out as soon as we got home. My math teacher is AFG, son of ABH. He yells at us for not having our jacket taken off the second we enter the classroom. He made a lot of his students cry. They even went to their homeroom teachers, saying they're scared of him because he yells at us for the smallest things and gets super mad all the time. He almost got one of my classmates expelled for touching his MG shoulder. TF. Or he always calls students' parents with a blocked number, and one time, when he forgot to block it, he changed it. Because he doesn't want anyone to know it. I just wear 2 jackets. Some of us do that. He sent me to my homeroom teacher because of that and made me explain to her why. My current Latin teacher. Surprise tests every week in subjects we either very barely study or just don't learn about. Nothing on classroom. No assignments. Literally no way of knowing the answers of the test. Oh, God. My English teacher is exactly like that. He gives us surprise tests that test only your knowledge of minor random details of a text instead of the plot or characters. He frequently goes off on tangents about his music hobby. And, on top of all that, he is known for having his students write massive essays to nebulous specifications. Doc points for anything he does not like. He gave me a 60% because I wrote in a sensationalist style. And give everyone 2 days to correct these faults. Not a teacher, but a guidance counselor I had when I was in my final year of school told me I would end up dead in a gutter in 20 years if I didn't go to university. He was a history teacher. A big FG racist man. He used call people names based on their colors, bodies, etc. I still wonder how this man managed to get that job of a teacher. But the good news is, I recently got that he was thrown out of the school because he was caught watching PN. Ms. Livesey. Her name spelled backwards is yes evil. Every villain is lemons. Snowmal see nail live wiry. That just made me realize live is evil. Had a teacher who would always put assignments on the class calendar at like 8 or 9 p.m. and expect them in the next day without discussing them the class before. It was quite infuriating. His expectations are never clear and change depended on the student. He's notorious for being the worst teacher in the school. Everyone had probably cried at least once in the class from feeling just so defeated. The smartest girl in our class got a B, which a grade the rest of us could only dream of. I remember he assigned homework on Halloween night and nobody had done it because he added it at 10 p.m. A student showed their English teacher and she sent him an email asking for the students to be pardoned, and it worked. 5th grade teacher. I turned in homework late and he said, "Well, I'll have to call your parents to talk to them about this." I broke down crying and begged him not to because my stepdad would beat me. So when he called my house while we were eating dinner, he mentioned what I said. And my stepdad was even angrier at me for telling a teacher that he was abusive. FK that teacher. Pamela Tharp. She used to throw heavy things at me for no reason. One time I was looking for a paper that I lost and she hid it from me. Then she proceeded to get mad at me for not finding it. So she threw a stapler at me. This was in 2nd grade. I am in 7th grade now and she still works there somehow. I'm gonna need the name of that school. I'm guessing you don't live in Idaho. But unless you do, it's Lincoln Elementary in Caldwell, Idaho. Well, funnily enough, my school history teacher was weird. She'd always give us strange assignments and tell weird stories about her personal life. But today I learned that she stabbed her husband to the stomach with a knife about a week ago. He's alive. The funny thing is that I found this question the same day I heard the news. Not the stabbing. If anything. I was a really smart kid and would easily get bored in class but wasn't disruptive. You could tell I was bored though. My home room and social studies teacher was this guy named Fros. He asked me point blank one day if I was bored and I said yes. He called me to the front of the class and slammed me against the supply closet door at the front and held his forearm against my throat and stared me in the eyes from like an inch away for what felt like an eternity. He later repeatedly told my parents that I was a bad influence and disruptive in parent-teacher interviews. I think he probably also lowered my grades. A lot of my female friends were also very uncomfortable with a lot of the comments he made to them. This was 7th grade. By the way, when a student came back from heart surgery, she straight up didn't believe them. There was a sub that hit on me when I was a 15-years-old junior, describing his 4-inch DK and bragging about the other girls he banged but saying they were legal because he waited until they graduated and turned 18. Please tell me he got arrested. Sadly, being a creep isn't illegal. Especially when he waits until they're not his students and they can consent. The most she could do is report it to the principals and parents. Subs get barred from classrooms for less. Edit. I'm glad Reddit lawyers are coming out of the woodwork to tell me that it's still illegal. I'm aware. You still have to prove it in court without reports. It's literally he said she said case that will be a slam dunk for any decent lawyer this guy can hire. You know a creep like this guy? Report his ass to your teachers and family members. It's a lot easier to convict their ass when there's a paper trail documenting his behavior. What? My 11th grade history teacher said in front of the whole class that I didn't have the looks to be a meteorologist. Which was my dream since I was 5. The class itself was a waste of time since nothing was actually graded. So no one even tried. And this was supposed to be an IBHL class, which is no joke. Since then I graduated from the #1 meteorology program in the US and glowed up big time. Went from over 190 pounds in HS to 155. While he was fired for being a pedo. Needless to say Mr. S can go FK himself. A math teacher in grade 9. His name was Mr. Tingley. Not even kidding. The entire class, other than me, failed grade 9 math. None of us ever understood what he was saying. As an adult now I think he had dementia. I got 93% in math despite not knowing WTF was happening. Ever. In that class. When I was doing placement forms for high school they tried to put me in academic challenge math. I said no way. Just please let me do normal math. When I had my first test in grade 10 I got 34%. There was an emergency meeting with the teacher and the principal where they interrogated me about being on drugs. Nope. No drugs. For some unfathomable reason the Tingler, what we called him, liked me and gave me that ludicrous mark in his class. The grade 10 teacher suggested moving me to remedial math. I said no. I asked her to teach me grade 9 and grade 10 math in the same year. She said that would require 3 hours of homework per day just for the grade 9 math. I said fine. I wound up with 5 hours of math homework per night. I literally spent a year doing homework until 1 a.m. and getting only 4.5 hours of sleep per night to catch up. Finished out the year with 85% in Math 10. The normal matriculation math. That's so weird. I had a guidance counselor named Mr. Tingley. He liked to rub my shoulders. She lovied DDD the boys. But always hated on and picked on the girls. Just as an example. I worked really hard on a project for her class. It came back with AD on it. My mom had had enough of her ST and took my project to the principal. She asked him to tell her what grade he would give the project. He looked it over and read through everything and said it was definitely a work. Mom showed him the grade she had given me on it. Teacher was spoken to and my grade changed. She also failed me in that class. Along with several other females. Claiming I had never turned in any homework. I had. But couldn't prove it. The boys in her class never received less than a B. The year after I had her. She retired after speaking with the principal and the school board again. By the way, I was a straight A student. Except for her class. I had a college professor who favored the boys blatantly. When a girl student asked a question she would always belittle us or ask the questioner why they hadn't read the assignment. If a boy student asked the same question suddenly it was, "Good question. Let's explore that." She couldn't explain concepts well at all. We destroyed her on the end of course review. After finding out she was seeking tenure. Seeking tenure pro tip. Don't alienate about 50% of the student body like a dumbass. I had a college ethics teacher who hated the 4 people that were a certain major. Mine. She failed us 4 and during one presentation. She kept asking me to speak louder and restart the presentation. She didn't even let me finish the first slide before she told me to sit down. I started crying and just left the room. We talked to the head of the university and wrote formal complaint letters. She got fired. FG miserable hag made our lives HL. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos.